Okay, so when you start naming compounds, the first thing you have to do is figure out if you have a molecular compound made of a whole bunch of nonmetals, or if you have an ionic compound made from a metal and a nonmetal, or a metal and a polyatomic ion. We'll get to polyatomic ions in a little bit. So we have to remember that the metals and nonmetals are separated from each other in the periodic table by this staircase here, where you have the metals downstairs, the nonmetals are upstairs, and you have the metalloids that are on the staircase. We're really going to avoid the metalloids. We're mostly just going to deal with the metals versus the nonmetals. So the first type of compound we're going to name are the binary molecular compounds, and those are made entirely of nonmetals. You could also have a metal and a nonmetal, or sorry, a metalloid and a nonmetal. We're going to mostly focus on nonmetals. And so I bet you already know how to name some of these. So the naming binary molecular compounds, here's an example of one that you probably already know how to name, something like CO2. Does anybody know the name of CO2? That's carbon dioxide. So let's try to figure out, how did we name carbon dioxide? We just took, this is carbon, right? So we just said that's carbon. And then oxygen, we changed it to dioxide. So we changed the ending of oxygen to "ide," right? And then we added this di. This is called a prefix. And what does that prefix di mean? That we had two, right? So we had two oxygens, so we called it dioxide. This will distinguish it from CO, which is carbon monoxide. Right, carbon monoxide just means I have one oxygen, but it still ends in "ide." So if we look at these rules here, the first word of the name is the element appearing first in the chemical equation. So this is carbon, and you don't change anything. You add a prefix if there's more than one for the first one. We don't say monocarbon dioxide or monocarbon monoxide. The first one never starts with mono. If there's one there, then you just drop the mono. Just for the first element in there. We don't ever start names with mono. It's a bad way to start the semester. It's a bad way to start a chemical name. Just remember it that way. So think of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. We don't say monocarbon dioxide. The second word is the one that we change a little bit. So since we have oxygen there, we're going to call this oxide. We change the ending to "ide." Change the ending to "ide." And then you're also going to add the prefix. So what prefixes do we have to know? They're listed down here. We need to know these, so you're going to want to memorize these prefixes. Otherwise, it's really hard to name things. We're going to memorize those, refer back to them. One is mono, two is di, tri, tetra, and after that it's just the name of a shape. We have a five-sided shape that's called a pentagon. Well, five, if you have five of any particular element, you're going to have, we'll put penta in there. Hexa, hepta, octa, nona, deca. We don't have to go more than 10. So let's see, how do we name something like this? I2O5. So the first person there, first element you have there is iodine. So keep that the same, iodine. And then I leave it blank in case I need a prefix. And then the other piece is oxygen, and I'm going to change the ending of the second word to oxide. Oxide. Instead of oxygen, I have oxide. And then I go and I add my prefixes. So I have two iodines, so I would call that one diiodide, and I have 5 oxygens, so I go up to this table and I say, oh, that's penta. So then I'm going to write instead of pentaoxide, sometimes we combine the O and the A and we just say pentoxide. Really, when you have an O and an A next to each other. So this becomes diiodine pentoxide. Now, can we do the reverse of that? And given the formula, can we write the name? So nitrogen, right? We know what nitrogen is. Nitrogen is just N. And fluoride, well, that must have come from fluorine, so that's F. And the 3 means I have 3 fluorides. So my formula looks like NF3. Again, we're going to do a whole lab on these, so we're just going to walk you through basic naming, and then we're going to work together in class and do the whole lab. So 2 compounds have common names. So water, H2O, which is water. It's not a systematic name, that's the common name. And NH3 is ammonia. So those are the only 2 that have traditional, that we use their traditional names, water and ammonia. Alright, so let's see if we can try to name some of these, or write the formulas. Nitrogen monoxide, so right, the first thing is nitrogen, right? Monoxide came from oxygen, the oxide. Mono means one. Notice how, and there's nothing in front of this nitrogen, so it has to be one. But notice how we didn't call it mononitrogen monoxide. If there's one, just one of the first element, then we just call it. We don't put a prefix on there at all. Now, dinitrogen tetroxide. So dinitrogen, that means I have two nitrogens. So whatever's right attached, the prefix that's attached to that element becomes the subscript down here. So dinitrogen means I have two nitrogens. Tetroxide, that's 4N2O4. So we had mono, di, tri, tetra. Dinitrogen monoxide, dinitrogen monoxide. And then carbon dioxide, you already know that one, carbon dioxide. Now, to go the other way, write the element name first, so I have nitrogen, right? I don't change that one. And if it gets confused, just refer back to something on, over here. So here I had nitrogen monoxide. This is going to be nitrogen, and then I want to have oxide over here. And how many oxygens do I have? 2. So that just becomes nitrogen dioxide. So this was nitrogen monoxide, NO, and this is nitrogen dioxide, NO2. This was dinitrogen tetroxide. So what do you think this is going to be? Dinitrogen trioxide. There we go. N2O5. See if you could do these. So I have nitrogen and oxygen again, so it's going to be nitrogen and then oxide. And then I'm going to put in my prefixes. I have 2 nitrogens, so that's dinitrogen, and I have 5, so that's going to be pentoxide. So instead of pentaoxide, because I already have the O there. Here I have SO3, so this is sulfur. And then I have 3 oxygens, so this is going to be oxide. And I have 3 of them, so it's trioxide. So sulfur trioxide. Okay, so there's a bunch of these for homework, and there's a whole lab where we're just going to name a bunch of, these are called binary molecular compounds, because they all have, they're just nonmetals. These are all things that are upstairs. You need ionic compounds a little bit different.